I'm dating him for experience. You're who I'll marry someday. She said like it was logical, so I wished her good luck. Now she's blocked by both of us. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. I used to love the way Chloe's mind worked. It was like a complex, beautiful machine, all spinning gears and clever connections. For 3 years, I felt like the luckiest man alive to be allowed inside its inner workings. We had a plan. Build our careers, save for a house, get a dog, then maybe in a few years, kids. It was a good plan, a solid one. I was all in. I remember one night, just a month ago, we were making pasta from scratch in our apartment. Flour was on her nose and I wiped it off with my thumb. She laughed. That unself-conscious, full-belly laugh that made my chest ache with how much I loved her. We were talking about where we'd go for our next vacation. She wanted Greece. I wanted Japan. We decided we'd do both over the years. We had all the time in the world. That was the memory I clung to when things started to feel off. It was the phone first. It became a third person in our relationship, buzzing with a frequency it never had before. She'd angle the screen away from me, a subtle tilt. I probably wouldn't have noticed if I weren't so attuned to her. She started going to late yoga sessions twice a week, coming home with a serene smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I trusted her implicitly. It was clue my clue. The crack in that foundation appeared on a Tuesday in the form of a crumpled receipt I pulled from the pocket of her jeans before doing laundry. The Gilded Elm, a restaurant so expensive and romantic I'd been saving for 3 months to take her there for our anniversary. The date on the receipt was from last Friday, the night she told me she was working late to help a colleague with a project. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I'm not a jealous guy. I believe in communication. So that evening, after we'd eaten a quiet dinner, I placed the receipt on the coffee table between us. Hey, I found this in your pocket. The Gilded Elm. I thought we were saving that for our anniversary. She didn't even flinch. She just glanced at it, then back at the TV as if I'd shown her a coupon for laundry detergent. Oh yeah, I went last week. For a work thing, I prompted my voice even though my heart was starting to hammer against my ribs. No, she said, finally, muting the television and turning to face me. Her expression was unnervingly calm. That was with Mark. Mark. The name felt foreign and acidic on my tongue. From your yoga class, I didn't know you two were friends. A small, almost pitying smile touched her lips. We've been seeing each other for a few weeks now. It's been really enlightening. The room seemed to tilt. The air grew thick, hard to breathe. Seeing each other, I heard the dumbfounded shock in my own voice. Chloe, what are you talking about? We're together. You and me. Exactly, she said, as if I'd finally grasped a simple concept. And we will be together forever, I think. But Alex, be realistic. She leaned forward, her eyes earnest, as if she were explaining a difficult math problem to a slow child. You're the one. You're stable. You're kind. You're husband material. You're my future. But I'm 26. I have needs you can't fulfill right now. I need experience. I need to know what else is out there before I settle down for good. Marcus, exciting, unpredictable, a little dangerous. He's what I need right now. I stared at her, my mind scrambling to process the sheer audacious cruelty of it packaged as logical life planning. My love, my commitment, our shared future. It was all being neatly filed away under long-term asset. I was being benched so she could play a few more exhibition games. She must have mistaken my stunned silence for comprehension because her smile widened, becoming almost triumphant. She delivered the line that would sever my reality from hers, spoken with the serene confidence of a philosopher stating an irrefutable truth. I'm dating him for the experience. You're who I'll marry someday. She spread her hands as if the elegance of it was self-evident. It just makes sense. The gears of her mind, once so beautiful to me, had just ground my heart to dust. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the blood roaring in my ears. I looked at the woman I had loved, the woman I had envisioned growing old with, and I saw a stranger, a cold, calculating strategist who saw people as resources to be managed. The love I felt didn't shatter. It evaporated, leaving behind a vacuum of absolute crystalline clarity. The confusion, the pain, the betrayal, they were all there, swirling beneath the surface. But something stronger rose to the top. A profound, unshakable sense of self-respect. I would not be a placeholder. I would not be a part of this plan. I stood up. The movement was calm, deliberate. I didn't knock over the coffee table. I didn't raise my voice. I looked down at her, my face a mask of neutral detachment. I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes for the first time. She'd expected an argument, begging, maybe even a fight. She was prepared for a dramatic scene she could logic her way through. She was not prepared for this. No, it doesn't. I said, my voice quiet but firm, cutting through the thick silence. Good luck with your experience. I turned and walked to our bedroom. Her bedroom. I opened the closet and took out my gym duffel bag. I didn't pack sentimentally. I didn't look at the photo of us on the dresser. I packed like a surgeon operating on his own life with precision and a complete detachment from the pain. Jeans, t-shirts, socks, underwear, my passport, my laptop, and charger the important documents from the fireproof box. I left the sweater she'd bought me for Christmas. I left the books we'd read together. I left the future we'd built in that room. When I walked back through the living room, bag in hand, she was still on the couch staring at me, her mouth slightly agape. The logic had failed. The plan had a variable she hadn't accounted for. My free will. I placed my key to the apartment on the counter next to the receipt from the Gilded Elm. Alex, she started, her voice losing its confident edge. I didn't look back. I opened the front door and walked out, closing it with a soft final click. The sound was deafening in its lack of drama. In the elevator, I took out my phone. My hands were steady. I went to her contact, a picture of her smiling face that now seemed like a mockery. I tapped block this caller. Then I did the same for her number on my messaging app. I didn't delete the photos. I didn't unfriend her on social media. I just severed the lines of communication. It was the most peaceful, decisive thing I had ever done. I got into my car and drove to a hotel. I'd booked on the way down in the elevator. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt the profound empty silence of a future that had just been abruptly cancelled. And in that silence, I knew one thing for certain. I was never ever going to be anyone someday ever again. The first week in the new apartment was defined by silence. It wasn't the peaceful kind, not at first. It was a heavy, ringing absence that amplified every thought in my head. I'd wake up and for a single merciful second forget. Then it would crash over me again. The receipt, the calm explanation, the words, someday. The pain was a physical thing, a cold stone lodged in my gut. I let myself feel it. I didn't fight the waves of anger, the pangs of humiliation. But I made a rule I would not break. I would not unblock her number. I would not drive past our old apartment. I would not cyberstalk Mark. I would treat the whole situation like a toxic spill contained and left to dissipate. So I moved. I went through the motions of building a new life in the sterile beige box of a rental. I assembled IKEA furniture, the rhythmic tightening of screws, a meditation. I stocked the fridge with only the food I like. I left my shoes in the middle of the floor because there was no one to complain about it. The healing wasn't linear. Some days the anger was a white hot coal. How dare she? How dare she treat a human being, a partner, like a 401k reliable, boring investment to be cashed in later. Other days it was just a profound sadness for the person I thought she was for the future that had been nothing but a mirage. But I channeled it. I joined a gym and pushed my body until it was too tired to feel anything else. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected. And when they asked about Chloe, I kept it simple. We weren't on the same page. It's over. I buried myself in work, taking on projects that demanded my full attention. Slowly, the silence in the apartment began to feel less like a void and more like peace. It was my silence, my space. The first crack in her perfect plan reached me about a month in from an unexpected source. A follow request on Instagram from Mark. I stared at the notification. A bitter laugh caught in my throat. The experience was trying to connect with the future. Curiosity, a dangerous but potent drug, won out. I accepted. I didn't have to dig. His story was a public unraveling. There were no names, but the context was glaringly obvious. A video of him angrily lifting weights at the gym, captioned, "When you find out you're just a F***king training wheel." A few days later, a black screen with white text. Some people are users. They see your value as temporary. Lesson learned. Then a mutual friend, Liam, called me under the guise of catching up. After 10 minutes of small talk, he circled the real subject. So, heard anything from Chloe, he asked, his tone carefully neutral. No, I said. I haven't. Yeah. Well, hit the fan over there. Apparently that Mark guy found out. Don't know how, but he pieced together that he was just her practice run. Liam let out a low whistle. Dude did not take it well. His ego was shredded. He blew up at her in the middle of a restaurant, called her a psycho, and told everyone in their yoga group what her grand plan was. It's a mess. I was quiet, taking it in. There was no satisfaction, not the fiery, vengeful kind I might have expected. Instead, it was a cold, quiet confirmation. Her logic, so infallible in her own mind, was a house of cards. The experience had developed self-awareness, and he'd kicked the table over on his way out. The first attempt came a week later, a voicemail left on my phone because her number was still blocked. I only knew about it because my carrier's visual voicemail transcribed it. Seeing her name in the transcript list felt like seeing a ghost. Her voice was calm, measured, trying to replicate the tone of logical superiority she'd used during the conversation. But I could hear the strain beneath it, a tiny fissure of panic. "Alex, it's me. Look, I know you're upset, and I respect that, but the experiment is over. It served its purpose. He's out of the picture. The data is in, and it confirmed what I always knew. We can get back on track now. The data." As if my heart were a set of metrics to be analyzed. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. She wasn't apologizing. She was recalibrating her plan. 2 days later, a text from a number I didn't recognize lit up my screen. Unknown number. Alex, please. I made a mistake. I was stupid. He meant nothing. It was always you. You're my future. Please don't throw us away. The confidence was gone, replaced by raw pleading. The architect was watching her blueprint burn. I didn't reply. Blocking this number felt different than the first. It was no longer an act of self-preservation. It was a ritual of closure. The silence from my end was a catalyst. The logical planner was breaking down and the true ugly entitlement was bubbling to the surface. The third message came from another new number, a blistering torrent of text that arrived late one night. Unknown number 2. So you're just going to ignore me forever after everything we had. After I trusted you with my future, you're really that cold. I see it now. You were never the man I thought you were. A real man would understand. A real man would fight for me. You're just a coward who can't even forgive a mistake. I read it once, then twice, and for the first time since I'd walked out, I felt a genuine smile touch my lip. There it was, the final, desperate play. When her logic failed and her pleas were ignored, the only tool she had left was to try and make it my fault. I was cold. I was a coward because I refused to play my assigned role in her drama. This wasn't pain anymore. It was liberation. Her words had no power over me because they were not about me. They were about her plan failing. I was no longer the stable backup. I was the variable that had deleted the entire program. I blocked the second number. My movements slow and deliberate. The chessboard was clear. She had no more moves to make. 3 months to the day after I'd walked out, I was at the Rusty Anchor, a pub I'd come to love for its unpretentious atmosphere and its complete lack of history with Chloe. I was with Liam and a couple of other friends celebrating a project launch. I was laughing genuinely at a stupid story one of them was telling. The weight was gone. The silence in my apartment was now a comfort and my life was my own. Then I saw her. She stood at the entrance, her eyes scanning the dimly lit room. She looked thinner, her shoulders hunched against a chill only she could feel. When her gaze landed on me, it was like a magnet snapping into place. She weaved through the tables, ignoring my friends, her eyes fixed on mine with a desperate intensity. Alex, she said, her voice a strained whisper. We need to talk, please. The table went quiet. My friends looked from me to her awkwardly. I took a slow sip of my beer, placing the bottle back on the coaster with a quiet, deliberate click. There's nothing to talk about, Chloe, I said. My voice was even devoid of the anger or pain she might have been hoping to provoke. It was the tone you'd use with a persistent telemarketer. There is. You don't understand, she pleaded, her words tumbling out in a rushed, frantic heap. I lost everything. My friends think I'm a user. Mark hates me. He told everyone. I have nothing without you. You were right. The plan was stupid. You are what I want. I looked at her, truly looked at her. The master planner was gone. In her place was a desperate woman trying to salvage the wreckage of a scheme that had blown up in her face. I felt a flicker of something. Not pity, but a distant academic recognition of a lesson learned too late. It wasn't a plan, Chloe. I said my words measured and clear. It was my life. And you don't get to schedule when you're in it and when you're not. Her face crumpled. So that's it. You're just done? It was then that movement from the bar caught my eye. Mark. He was standing up from a stool, having clearly witnessed the entire exchange. He didn't look triumphant or smug. He looked tired and maybe a little disgusted. He met my gaze across the room. There was no camaraderie, no brotherhood, but there was a shared understanding nod. Two men who had been cast in roles in a play they never auditioned for, both now stepping off the stage for good. He gave Chloe one last contemptuous glance, then turned and walked out the pub without a backward glance. Chloe saw it. She saw the silent communication, the unified rejection from both the experience and the future, the color drained from her face. The two pillars of her grand design had crumbled to dust in front of her, and they had done it together. I stood up, pulling some cash from my wallet and tossing it on the table for my drink. I looked at my friends. I'll catch you guys later. Then I turned to Chloe. She was shattered, a ghost of the confident woman from 3 months ago. My final words weren't delivered with venom or triumph. They were a simple, factual statement of my reality. I'm not done. I was done months ago. I said, my voice calm and definitive. Don't contact me again. I walked past her, out of the pub and into the cool night air. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The chapter was closed. The lesson learned and my peace was intact. The fallout was swift and absolute. Liam told me later that Chloe tried to spin the story, painting Mark as a liar and me as an emotionally stunted coward who abandoned her, but the damage was done. The story of her logical plan was too uniquely damning, too revealing of her character. Mutual friends, once sympathetic, now kept their distance. She had become a cautionary tale. About a week after the pub encounter, I was cleaning out my blocked messages list. There were a few more desperate, angry texts from new numbers I'd auto-blocked. I deleted them without reading. Then, out of a morbid sense of closure, I pulled up Mark's Instagram. I wasn't following him, but his profile was public. His most recent story was a single stark image, a screenshot of his blocked contacts list. The top entry was Chloe's name and number. The caption read, "Some mistakes you only make once. Blocked and deleted. On to better things." A slow wry smile spread across my face. The irony was so perfect, it was almost poetic. She had orchestrated this entire drama to have both the experience and the security. She had wanted to keep us both in our designated boxes under her control. Now, she was blocked by both of us. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't send it to anyone. I simply closed the app. The satisfaction wasn't in her humiliation, but in the quiet, symmetrical justice of it all. Her plan had not just failed, it had backfired in the most hilariously literal way possible. The words, "You're who I'll marry someday now," felt like a line from a bad movie, a cringeworthy joke from a past life. They had no power over me. They were just words spoken by a stranger. I looked around my apartment. It was no longer a sterile beige box. It was filled with my things, my energy, my peace. The future was no longer a detailed blueprint. It was a blank canvas. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like the greatest privilege imaginable. She was a closed book, a lesson learned, a ghost successfully exercised, and I was free. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.